Hey, welcome to the Gen X Rewind podcast. My name is Evan,
And I'm Brady.
and we welcome you to this edition. Last one of the year, I believe,
Yeah.
unless we're doing a drunken New Year's Eve podcast, which might be entertaining, by the way. That could actually be pretty entertaining.
Yeah, right.
We'll think about that. We'll think about that one tomorrow. Gen X, as you guys know, is people born from 1965 until 1980, and we believe it's the one of the best generations that have ever existed in this country. You got the
Sure.
Great Generation. Sure, they fought in a war, but it was our generation that ended the Cold War. So there you go.
Oh,
Right?
that's true.
Which is better, to fight in a war or to end the Cold War? Um, and we appreciate the lives that we had when we were young children, and the podcast is about that, and it's about our perspective on world events and sports and life in general. These are all things that Gen X people like to talk about, and we think it's interesting to just listen to two people talk about stuff, right? Not scripted, and we're not politically correct, and we're not woke, and we're none of that. It's just two people talking. You, as a listener or a viewer, might find that interesting because it might not be like what you experience on a daily basis in your work life or maybe even in your home life. I hope that's not true, but you may not listen to two people have transparent conversations very often. We'd like to bring that back, thus the Gen X Rewind podcast. How do you feel about that, Brady?
I feel good. I feel good. I couldn't help but think, would we be speaking German right now if our generation was facing the Nazis?
That's right. That might be the case. It's like
Das ist
if
gut.
the if the Gen Z population was in charge of things, yeah, we'd be in big trouble right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is funny. Like this is off topic, but it maybe get us into some topics. So I was looking at it was a post on X, and uh, it was about Auschwitz, and it was kind of reciting the story. And I don't know what the occasion necessarily of that was, but it might have to do with we're coming up on the what is it, the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, or 60th, or I don't, whatever it is, we're coming up on it, right? It was 1945 and it's going to be 2025. So 80 years.
Mhm.
That doesn't seem possible either,
Yeah.
right? But as part of that, it was some rare photographs taken by the Russians who liberated Auschwitz. That's probably not how we heard about it in our history class in 1985, that it was the Russians that liberated uh, the Jews from Auschwitz, right?
Hmm.
It wasn't the Americans, it was the Russians who actually liberated Auschwitz. And it might come to surprise to people that Russia and the United States were allies in World
Mhm.
War II,
Yeah.
right? As well as China, even for that matter. China hated Japan, still hates Japan, I think. But um, that's just a little twist on history, right? Like Russia was the bad guy when we were in school, right? And it was clear Russia's the bad guy. Um, in fact, all the movies of the 70s and 80s portrayed Russia as the bad guy, right?
Mhm.
Always. And then it switched after the Cold War ended and stuff. Then it was breakaway Russian republics, right? Every movie, they got a bomb and they're gonna, it's like every movie from like the late 90s was like
Yeah.
that. But it's interesting because how the interpretation of history has changed from when we were kids. Like I remember this, and I felt like I got the rug pulled out from underneath me. In school, we were learning about astronauts and the Apollo missions and all this when I was in school. And we talked about John Glenn, and we talked about Alan Shepard, the first man in space, right? Now, what they didn't tell us is they said, yes, Alan Shepard is the first American in space. You want to parse that for us? Uh, Not the first person in space. That was Yuri Gagarin. The
Hmm.
Russians had the
Hmm.
first satellite, the first person in space, the first monkey in space, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
I was going to say that's if you don't count the first, what, the dog that was
yeah,
up
the dog
there.
that went up. Yeah. So it's like, I always imagine that dog just like, what the heck is
Oh,
going on?
yeah,
It's like, I
oh,
didn't
man.
sign up for this. There
Yeah,
better be a really big treat at the
yeah,
end of this thing.
yeah. I
But
never saw the after photos of that dog.
yeah, no,
Her
whatever happened to
face.
those? Like, what happened to the monkey that went in space? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. But we were taught that, with the subtext that America was the first in space and that Alan Shepard was the first in space, but he wasn't.
Right.
We thought that's what that meant, right? When they
Yeah.
said he was first in space, we thought that they meant first man in space, but they meant first American in space.
Yeah.
That was a subtle way of, creating that environment where um, it was very American centric, but also Russian negative, right?
Hmm.
And that continued and still continues, which is, I'm baffled by that,
Yeah.
right? Is why that still continues to this day, that somehow we need to make Russia into a bogeyman, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because we just went yesterday we went and saw the movie Homestead where a nuclear bomb goes off in LA and it kind
Oh,
of
really?
yeah, it was an interesting plot. They don't tell you anything about who's behind the nuclear blast. It just is detonated and then kind of what happens to the country going forward. And it was a really interesting plot. But yeah, the first thing you think of is it's probably the Russians
Right.
that did it. But I mean, nowadays it could be the Middle East. It could be, if terrorists get their
North
hands on.
Korea.
Yeah, I think there's a list that would love to check that box. Um, so yeah, so I'm not sure why we're not working more together and being more. I think it's a win-win and benefits everybody if we can do that versus just make them lifelong sworn enemies. Year in and year out for
I would
sure.
like to, like I've always said this, I would like to, and this isn't an anti-American sentiment. It's just I would rather have a broader perspective on world events,
Yeah,
right? Because I mean, I studied history. History's written by the winners, right? And that's the truth, right? You look back all the Roman times and whatever else, whoever won the battle wrote the history of how it went
right.
and how the other people were bad, right? That's always how it goes.
Yeah,
Um, so I've always thought I would be interested in reading a Russian history book about World War II and about the Cold War and about
right.
the space race, written
Yeah,
from a Russian perspective. At
yeah,
least what was there? There's nothing wrong with hearing someone's perspective. They may not be right. Maybe theirs is propaganda as much as ours was, but I'd at least like to know that or even have a movie made from the other perspective,
right. Yeah,
right?
that
Just to see. And World War II stuff, especially like what about Japan's perspective? What about Germany's perspective? What about Italy's perspective? Right?
right,
Like, what were they thinking? It doesn't mean that anybody was right or that what they did or how that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is just understanding someone else's perspective on what they
right.
thought. For instance, I had a we had a childhood friend and he was actually my mom was married to him for 10 years later in life and he was in the German military, German regular army, I believe. And at the end of World War II, 17 years old, whatever. And, his story convinced that Germany was going to take over the world. And that was a good thing,
Yeah,
right? Um, so that was his perspective on it.
Right.
And like just hearing that, right? And his understanding of what things were like at the time and, coming to find out how things are here in America and wanting to move here and then moving here and being successful and everything else, living a long life. It's all very fascinating. And it's interesting just to hear the perspective. So, like the perspective, I've got a couple of people that I know who are Russian, and I just like to hear what their perspective is on things,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you see the world
Yeah. And then the difference between the perspective of the people and the
and the
perspective of the
government?
government, what did the people really think, the Germans that were there? We know what the government, the propaganda and everything they were telling them, but did they buy it? Did they, that's where I think it gets really interesting with Russia and what do the people really think? Well, we may never know what they really think because of what the government retaliation would be if they
Yeah.
vocalize that. But yeah, it's interesting for
Yeah,
sure.
because you don't, I think you're, I think you're selling history short if you don't listen to both sides,
Yeah,
right? I think
yeah,
it's important to understand that um, a lot of, I think a lot of the disagreements and everything else are manufactured for other purposes, right?
right.
That propaganda is created for other purposes.
Yeah,
Um, Money, power, those are
sure.
the things that are in play, and the people either play along or they don't play along.
Right.
And the that person might be just as committed to their cause as I am to my cause.
Yeah,
And maybe who's to say who's right or wrong? Sometimes you're going to be told that you're right and that the other people are wrong, and you're
yeah,
going to be given evidence of that evidence, which may or may not be true. And you don't have to look any further than the world today to see people will say, well, are you sure? I don't know that that happened.
yeah.
It's like you can't live in this world and think that every story you get is the full truth, right? For
Right.
instance, when Trump got shot, I think we might have talked about this before, like USA Today or Time Magazines or CNN or whatever, their first coverage of the event was Trump falls at rally
Yeah.
and had to be helped up by the Secret Service after a
Mhm.
fall. That was the first story, right?
Yeah.
So there's obviously a narrative trying to be created that's erased 72 hours later when you start to know the facts and stuff. So you know that it happens. So how many times in the past did it happen and we didn't catch it?
Yeah, that I think that's if we fast forward to the pet peeve section here. I think that's
Yeah,
that's journalistic integrity is
it's an
really
oxymoron now.
yeah, it's been more weaponized, and I think people, especially this election, are realizing, hey, we're losing freedom if we have people steering us as opposed to just being able to make up our own minds what to do. Um, yeah, and I think, going back to what you were saying, I worked with a gal from South Korea who would tell me that when she was growing up, she would see children in North Korea over by the fence starving. And they would sometimes sneak over and kind of give them food. And, she's telling me the story. I'm thinking, well, they're starving. They're going to take the food. They're going to eat it. They take the food and they run and give it to their government. They turn the food over, even though they're starving,
Oh
they turn
man.
the food over. So that shows you the amount of fear. This is an actual account that we're going by here.
Right.
But you just you take a step back and think to yourself, the amount of fear that would be generated. And if you're starving and you're still not putting the food in your mouth, but you're turning it over, they must have a knife to the throats of all the people so they can't, control anything or do anything on their own.
Yeah, and that's why being allowed to have different opinions.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's what free speech is all about. This is the thing that's just crazy to me. It's like there's one political side here that believes free speech is not saying anything that I don't like.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's another side that says, no, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
That you're allowed to say something that others don't agree with, that other things that other people are even offended by, things that you don't like, things that you disagree with, all of that. That's why free speech exists, right? Is to be able to say them. And then you've got governments, platforms, and everything just saying, nope, you can only say what is on a pre-approved list of things to say,
Right.
right? This podcast is even on some of those platforms who have done that in the
Mm.
past, um, which is crazy when you think about it, right? That
Yeah.
we have to live in a world that's controlled by what the approved opinions are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Seems like money and power
yeah,
have,
it's money and power it
you
controls
know,
that, right?
yeah.
It's for control.
Yeah.
You don't have to look any further than COVID to see money and control are what's behind most things, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that's a good example of, just wanting to get facts or evidence to make up your mind what to do. Do we need masks? Early on, we're grabbing painters, masks, and things are flying off the shelf at Home Depot. Just want to know, safety wise for the family, what are we really up against? And then to have the government, just completely drop and kick the ball repeatedly to where you don't trust anything that's being said. It's almost pushing you in the opposite direction whenever
yeah,
it's
it does.
a definitive statement.
And I would say it's specifically pushes Gen X people in the other direction because,
Yeah,
hey, you just say what the facts are, and then I'll make my own decisions. Thank you very much.
yeah,
Right? Don't try to force anything on me. I don't like it. It's funny. We were having a conversation with my son the other night, and my wife was reminding him to brush his teeth or something. Well, he just digs his feet in terms of like, now I don't want to do it. Right. And you know, I had to chuckle to myself because I completely understand that mentality.
yeah,
Right. I feel the same way. Don't tell me to do it because when you do, I don't want to do it because I don't want to feel like I'm being manipulated or forced kind of against my will. I want to do it because I want to do it and because it's
right,
the right thing to do and because it's, a good thing or whatever else. It feels like it cheapens it if somebody has to tell me to do it,
right. Yeah, force you.
especially somebody I don't trust or I don't believe or whatever. If you tell me to do something, it's like, nope.
Yeah, yeah,
Who are you to tell me how to live my life or what to do? Or I don't
yeah,
want to hear that. That's a pretty common Gen X perspective. I think on the world, it's just like, no, just, you know, I'm fine with you sharing facts and then go away. I will decide, and I don't want any pushback if I do something or say something that you don't like.
yeah,
Right? You had your chance, right? You told me this and that. True. Turns out none of that was true, but now you want me to believe you. Right?
yeah.
Like I was thinking about that. It's like with the weather stuff and global warming. This was on my list of things I wanted to talk about in terms of a pet peeve as well was and you might be too young for this, but when I was a kid, when I was in elementary school, the science stuff was about the next ice age.
Hmm.
So they were threatening us with an ice age. And if we don't recycle aluminum cans There's going to be another ice age. And by the way, you live in Minnesota, so you're going to be completely buried in ice and die like
First.
the woolly mammoth, right? And I'm not kidding. That's exactly how it was presented,
Wow.
right? You have to do these things or there will be another ice age.
Yeah.
And then what, 15 years later, wait, nope, it's not an ice age. It's we're all going to burn to death from global warming,
Yeah.
right? And the globe is getting hotter and the oceans are melting. Wait a minute. 5 minutes ago, you were saying there was going to be another ice age,
Yeah. What is
right?
it? Are we burning up or
Uh,
freezing
yeah,
to
which one is
death?
it? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, we can't make up our minds, so we'll just call it, uh, you know, uh, not global warming anymore. We'll call it climate change,
Climate change.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's climate change. Well, just last week there was climate change. It was December 21st, which means it's officially winter, and the climate changes in the winter, right? It's called weather. It's called seasons. And they're like, it's unseasonably warm out now. It's like, right, that's called summer. And it happens every year, right? But you hear stories about extreme cold and blizzards in the winter as if it's abnormal, which it's not. And then you hear stories about extreme heat and warmth and drought in the summer like it's unusual, which it's not. It
Yeah.
happens all the time. And they're like, oh, it's so much warmer than it was now in the past. And I've heard some really good scientists say it only depends on what you're comparing it to,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
If you compare it to the 70s, yes, it's warmer. If you compare it to the 30s, no, it's cooler. So
Yeah.
which is it, right?
It's hard to know what's being weaponized and what's being utilized for power and money now with all these political things going on. It's almost hard to be able to extract good,
Yeah.
solid information to make up your mind because everyone's trying to steer you their way or to get your
And it's because
vote
of
through.
money,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Why should I care about global warming? It's because there are some NGOs that will make a lot of money if I donate to their cause.
Yeah.
Or they'll get government contracts to study global warming and make $1 billion, cutting holes in the ice in Antarctica to tell us that, the temperature went up 0.00001 degree over the last 40 years or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
money involved. Take away the
Yeah.
money, all of that goes out the window.
Right. Big corporations weighing in, swaying things. If something's being done that's harmful to us, maybe they can let it slide by, greasing the palms of politicians here and there. And then, you've spent your whole life consuming
Yep.
this food that, oh, it causes colon cancer. Sorry,
Oops.
yeah, 40 years from now, they'll come forward and say, oh, that sweetener you used did do this, but yeah, here's the movie behind how it was able to survive for so
Yeah.
many years. Sorry about that.
Yeah. And I just heard that story the other day too. It was like, okay, they now have officially put eggs back on the health food list and are taking processed cereals off.
Yeah,
Like, why do I, first of all, why is the government involved in that discussion anyway?
yeah,
I don't know, like, why that was a thing.
yeah,
What the government would tell us what we should be eating and not. I think that's the opposite of what it should be. They should provide information and allow us to decide and not criminalize the things that, people decisions people might make about it. But, it's like the egg had been a staple food for what? 5,000 years
right.
until 1980, when all
Yeah,
of a sudden we got smart and said, no, no, eggs are bad for you. Gee, I wonder who was behind that.
yeah,
Couldn't be the cereal companies, could it?
yeah, yeah. Kellogg.
Right? Like, we got to stop people from eating bacon and eggs for breakfast. We're never going to sell any cereal,
Yeah, let's
right?
come up
So
with a
let's,
food pyramid that has
yeah,
grains,
grains
cereal,
at the top. Yeah, the big
90% of your diet.
should
Yeah.
be grains and bread. And it's
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Fruits and
Like,
veggies, they're okay, but you really need more cereal.
you need more. loaves of bread in your diet,
Right,
right?
right. 4 sandwiches a day, says nature's
Yeah,
mate or whatever.
unbelievable. I mean, it's kind of nice to see the pendulum swinging back a little bit in the other direction in terms of like, great, we can recognize that eggs and maybe steak as well is actually good for most people,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
And
what?
the
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that you probably saw the list of people that passed away this year, 130 something celebrities. And what stuck out to me was just, there's like so and so 97 years old,
right, right. It
and you had, of course, Jimmy Carter died was yesterday, 100 years
was
old.
100
All these people from that earlier generation are living to be in their 90s or 100.
before. Yeah, my
And
mom herself is 93 and
yeah,
her mom was 98 when she
yeah,
died.
yeah.
And they didn't have any of this modern science to tell us all the great things that we should be eating. They were eating steak and eggs 3 times a day.
That's what I was going to say. Eggs, milk, all this stuff. And, they didn't have as many of the processed things and chemicals and all that, but still, I think if we follow that 1940s, 1930s diet or earlier, you're probably on the right path.
Yeah, because you figure like, think of how long those people would live now with if they had had the other stuff
Yeah,
that is better now,
yeah,
right? Like the better, they're not drilling holes in your head to,
yeah.
let out the evil spirits or like putting leeches on you. Right? It's like there was some common sense things that have developed over time, but I
Yeah,
think the pendulum swang way too much, the other direction where it's like, well, now everything that anybody associated with medicine says must be the best possible thing because they just said it. Well, yeah, they got paid to say it, right? Like in a lot of cases, they got paid to say it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't, it's like that skepticism part. This is why Gen X, I think, is in some respects thriving, is because we have a healthy amount of skepticism.
Yeah, yeah. I agree.
And I think it's a good thing to be a healthy skeptic, right?
Definitely, especially when there's a trail of either money or power to be made. Uh,
Yeah.
that just automatically, you know, raises that concern.
I I question I question almost everything and I don't go one way blindly. It's like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've been wrong,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
It's
another
like,
yeah, another get off my lawn example of pet peeve is the sudden, and I'm sure you've had this happen, just unexplained sudden increase in your Verizon bill or your Cox,
yeah.
just magically $30 more. We just dealt with this today. Oh, and we missed it, so it's been going on for 3 months.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
And then you call and you know what you're going to go through. You're going to go through this battery of
On
people.
purpose.
Yeah, that really
So you
just
give up.
stir, kind of wear you down. Well, those are taxes. Wait, what do you mean? $30 increase in taxes? I mean, that
Yeah,
doesn't
how?
make sense.
No.
Please hold. We're going to look at it again. Okay. And it just wears you down until eventually, you go all the way up the chain and you end up, if you're lucky, getting your bill back to where it was before with some magic promotion that shows up. But
Yeah. Or 5 years later, you're involved in a class action lawsuit for illegal billing or deceptive billing practices, right? I got two of those going right now, just FYI,
wow.
right? There's one against Hulu and there's one against VRBO.
Okay.
And it's class actions against, using private information that they said that they weren't using, but they were found to be using it, or they were, in the case of VRBO, allowing renters to put on or owners to put on ridiculous numbers that don't factor into what it actually costs.
Uh,
And because they did, VRBO and hotels have and airlines have gone the same way as cars used to be. So, okay, here's the car. It's $30,000. But there's dealer prep and there's paperwork and there's, undercoating if you live in the Midwest, right? Rust proofing and clear coating and all this stuff. So that's actually another 2,000, right? But that wasn't reflected in the cost, right? In the initial thing. And that's the same thing. So book a nice hotel. You guys like to go to Hawaii. We like to go to Hawaii. Hey, it says it's, round number. It's $199 a night. It's $30 a day for parking.
Yeah.
And
What?
there's a $20 a day resort fee. And there's, whatever else. It's like, wait, but that wasn't factored into the nightly cost that you
Right.
presented,
Right. You
right?
can keep tacking things on and
And
going.
can I opt out of the resort fee by not playing shuffleboard? Right?
Right.
Like it's
Yeah.
no.
And then
Okay,
once
well
again,
then that should be there.
we're back to our business model of parking lot, $30 a
Yeah.
day for every
Yeah.
guest.
It's
I mean, you and I'm telling you,
perfect. It's a perfect scenario. That or a vending machine, right? Where it's just like go pick up the money every week. It's
yeah,
like I
right.
think that's what I want to do. Parking lot sounds good too,
Yeah.
right? Because you own something then as well, right? And you
Yeah.
if somebody comes along and wants to put up a hotel there, you sell it for $1 billion and
Yeah. Well, who makes that, draws that line? I mean, $5 a day. Okay, I can swing $5 a day
right.
for parking. $30 a day to park at the
It's just
for
a
resort
it's a it's just a ripoff. That's
is
all it is. It's an absolute ripoff. It doesn't cost them anything. That parking lot was built 40 years ago. What are they talking about?
yeah.
They don't
You
have to
feel
do anything.
if you don't fight that, you feel like you're being just completely taken advantage of. Uh,
Yeah. And
it's
so VRBO does the same thing. So they have a cleaning fee and then they have a processing fee from the owner, like
yeah,
not part of the VRBO thing. Oh, it's, there's a parking spot, so we charge an extra $100 a day so you could park in front of the place, right? Well,
yeah,
that's ridiculous.
yeah, yeah. No,
And it's, it's not like if that's the rule, if the rule is you can do that, then it's like I don't necessarily blame the owners for doing it because they're not, maybe they weren't violating something, but it's the spirit. I'm comparing your property at $200 a night to another property at $200 a night, right?
mhm.
Or $400 a night. And I've chosen not to pick the 400. I want the 200. But then I go through the process and it turns out it actually is going to cost me $400 because of the stuff that wasn't listed. It's not included in the nightly cost. That's a game.
Yeah,
So it used to be this way on eBay, and some people figured it out, and then eBay put a stop to it, which was, hey, this brand new stereo I'll sell it to you for $29 and it's worth 1,000. And people would be like, oh gosh, I'm going to buy it. So they put it in their cart, and then the checkout fee, delivery fee is $701.
yeah,
So the genius of that was I only have to pay to eBay what the cost of the item was because they take 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is, right? They get a fee from you. If you sell for $10, eBay gets two or whatever, gets $1, whatever it is, right? They get $1 of the sale of the sale price of the item. So people were selling it for $20 when it's $1,000 item, so they don't have to kick back all that money to eBay,
right,
right? So they just added as the shipping cost was $500, $700, right? And the buyer figured it out that that's still competitive, right? It's the same as this other guy who's selling it for $999 and free shipping. It's essentially the same deal, but the seller is not having to pay all of that money directly back to eBay.
right. Yeah,
It's the same reason why there's businesses who want to be cash only because they have to pay 3% to Visa on every sale. And if you pay cash, I don't have to pay that. So I make an extra 3%. right?
Yeah.
Without raising my cost. And the thing is, you can't win because if you raise the cost, it's 3% of the new cost.
Yeah.
So it doesn't help. And
Right.
then you price yourself out of the zone.
Yep.
I don't know what these are complaints. These are get off my yards. I don't know what the solution is necessarily to all of that, but transparency about what the cost is for things up front with all of that included and as part of an advertised daily, monthly price, that's what it should be.
Yeah. Just honesty.
Because if
Definitely.
you go to a car dealer and they say, yeah, you can buy this Honda Accord for $299 a month. Okay. Am I writing out a check every month to Honda for $299? Well, no. So then why are you advertising that's the monthly cost? Because
Right.
it's not. I
Yeah.
can't pay you $299 a month for the car. There's going to be at least $100 of everything else added in on a monthly basis,
Right.
right? But your advertising says $299, not including 10 other things. What's
Yeah.
the point of advertising $299 then? Are those other things optional? No. So, right? I don't get that. I've never understood. It's just a trick.
Yeah. It's a trick. Get people in the door, and then you get your hooks in them and hope they end up just okay. Wear them down, go through multiple salespeople and the manager and wear them down and get them to a point where they'll just, okay, I'll pay the 350.
Just to
Yeah.
get you to go away.
Oh, I hate that.
And I think that's what government taxes are. It's a we threaten you and scare you and you don't want to deal with us, so you'll just pay it.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
won't complain about it, right? You're not dumping tea off a ship. So, you know, we went from a 3% tax on tea was outrageous enough to start a war and to create our own country. And now you get taxed 38% and we don't say anything. We just sit
Yeah.
back and go, oh, I guess we need it for cow fart studies or whatever it is, right? It's like,
You
I
know,
guess
that,
the Ukraine, they're not driving enough Rolls Royces over there. So maybe
yeah.
I should pay more taxes.
Well, and that's the thing is, just the apathy that exists now in this country. It seems like, we go back to when we were kids. It seems like a lot of the patriotism and kind of personal responsibility has been kind of sucked out of the
Yep.
country. And then you end up with these SUV-sized drones flying around, and people are like, oh, I wonder what that's about. Nobody really, hey, is this something that, is a threat to our safety? Or, what is going on? What's the government up to? Is the government behind this? Are they not? What's going on? It just becomes I wonder what that's about. Oh, there's more of them. Oh, they're spread. Okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You
And it
know,
happens so frequently that you're you're just gaslit by all
yeah,
of it,
yeah,
right? Like ultimately that's what it is. It just happens all the time. It's like the news cycle, right? You never you never have time to process it, right? Because they're on to the next thing.
yeah,
So, a news organization comes out, makes up some big lie. JFK Jr. wants to ban polio vaccines, right? That was a lie like a week ago.
yeah,
First of all, who believes that?
yeah,
Who's so dumb that you believe that anybody would be saying that,
yeah.
right? No one is saying that. Literally, no one is saying that. No one has threatened that, nothing. But you can make up a story about somebody and let it run for 2 days. And then you're on to the next thing and you never get it resolved. And maybe if, depending on your news source, you never even hear the correction. No, he never said that,
Right.
right? And it
Yeah,
goes both ways. I mean, it's on both sides. Everybody does it, it seems like. It's because you can get away with it with the news cycle. You can lie every day and then you're on to the next thing. And here's the response. Hey, so ladies of the View, you lied about so and so yesterday. Well, we don't want to talk about old news, right?
yeah. There's no
That's
accountability.
been dealt with.
That's the problem. Is just this lack of accountability, and I think one of the way that some of these news outlets they're just putting personal kind of opinions, but they're running with it like it's
They talk
legit.
about it like it's news.
Yeah. I read one today that talked about how the cost of college has gone up so significantly. The numbers of kids enrolling in college is dropping significantly. So, that's an interesting story. You want to read, okay,
Yeah.
what's going on here? What's, the conclusion of this going to be? So, so it talks about, okay, so here's the problem is people are having less kids now. The number of new births are dropping, so that's going to actually hurt colleges. Their tuition, it's been going up. That's dissuading people. So, and it gives you a list. Okay, so people, their choices are going to be college. It's going to be trade school. It's going to be military or entrepreneurs. And the conclusion of all this at the end was, well, with the new regime coming in, it looks like they're really going to be emphasizing military and pushing military. And so this is a big threat to our country is kids are going to be more apt to go into military than to go into college because of the cost and because of this new regime coming in and glorifying, the military and, weaponizing our country. And I just thought, are you kidding me? It's like, be sure to drink your Ovaltine,
Yeah, it's exactly like that. A
a
crummy
crummy
commercial?
commercial. It's like
It's
I read
like,
this whole thing and reading hurts my brain and I actually read it and the end is
yeah.
just some political hook
Oh
or
gosh.
barb pill to
It's
swallow.
and if you read any article, it's like that's where the at some point the media crossed over to just being the shill for government, where these articles start off like that, and at the end of the day, at the end of the article, oh, here's the point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Here's the angle that we want you to see, right? That, you know, this is bad for you and you should do this, or you're gaslit. Only stupid people wouldn't wear a mask, or whatever it's just like that's what it comes down to,
yeah,
at the end of the game.
yeah,
And then you're like, oh, for crying out loud, right? It's like,
yeah.
it's like, come on, stop trying to pull one over on me,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and you take a step back and you realize, hey, those are the same options that existed 50 years ago,
Yeah.
college, military, entrepreneur, or, it's just, or trade school. Nothing's changed. And to try and say, well, the military, I mean, who's going to recommend that to their kids? Because, boy, the cost has gone up. Yeah, I think you should be a soldier.
Going in the
Let's
military. Yeah.
I mean, I think common sense, the
Yeah.
Gen
It's
X
common
way of
sense.
just taking a step back and thinking about things critically, using critical thinking skills goes such a long way. I think that's what we kind of grew up with. Uh,
But we're late. But the generation now is lazy in terms of having to think. They want to be told what to think. And then they use AI to do everything, right?
yeah.
I read just yesterday, it was a guy who said he interviewed a candidate, and the guy was like a smart, 4.0 from Harvard or whatever it was, Stanford something. And there was times though in the discussion where he would kind of struggle to find a word or a phrase or something, right? This is a smart kid.
Mhm.
And then the interview was they were just went on and he said, oh, sometimes I can't find the right word because he uses AI for everything now.
Mm,
So he's not even thinking for himself. He just
yeah.
types in something and then has a AI spit back something, you know, properly thought through and grammatically correct. So his brain doesn't do that anymore,
Yeah.
right? It thinks
Yeah.
in terms of AI prompts, not in terms of like actually having a well worded sentence or, a constructed thought. They just, hey, tell me about this, and AI spits something out, and then they're like, oh, okay, that must be true. So whatever. I don't even think critically about it. I just accepted whatever it said.
Yeah. That you hear about, like, for instance, pilots. Technology is getting so advanced
Plane
that,
lands itself.
yeah, the plane pretty much takes off and lands itself. You got a pilot there to start the engine.
Yeah.
But that's something you think about. Well, if the skill set for pilots is eroding over time because of the planes becoming so advanced, is that kind of on a smaller scale what's really going on, with our kids and younger generation is critical thinking skills are being eroded by all these other uh, ways to utilize technology.
And I would say like there's there's a split in society now between the people who take everything with a grain of salt and have critical minds, and then 70% of everybody else who just is lazy. Like
Yeah.
they don't think about anything. And they just take whatever they see and whatever they hear and okay, that's it. That must be it.
Mm.
And if you ever had a conversation with one of these people, you're just shocked that they've given no critical thinking to this thing ever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they say whatever they repeat some line from a news show or something as if that's the truth, and you just look at them like, is that your only source of information? Like, do you not realize how stupid that sounds?
That's the best you got?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know,
Yeah.
hey, this politician is awesome. It's like 6 months ago, everybody said this politician was terrible.
Yeah.
And then they started telling you that they were great, and now you think they're great.
Yeah.
Does that
I,
not bother you? Like thinking of yourself as an intelligent human, don't
yeah.
you think you owe it to yourself to at least look into that a little bit?
Well, or just look at someone's track record and say, okay, what areas have they been an amazing leader, and
Yeah,
what have they built? What have they overcome? Where's their skill set? When you have somebody like, even in like a coach who has lost with every
right.
team that he's coached so far, all of a sudden he's going to come and coach your team and be an amazing coach. That's, I think most people would be like, maybe we should go a different direction. But in politics,
No, nobody ever, nobody, and they don't get fired like for the
no,
most part either. It's just like,
yeah,
in college, in football, it's like, yeah, coaches get fired because they make, bad decisions and are a bad leader and can't win. In politics, you just get reelected,
oh yeah, your
right?
city, San Francisco,
Oh, it's a
and
piece of crap,
down the
but you just keep
tubes,
getting elected.
but nobody seems to make a regime change, or go a different direction, or have any new insight. It's just, yep,
That's
reelected.
like people in California. It's like maybe stop voting for the same people you always vote for who continue to make things worse. Where's the disconnect? That like, hey, maybe these aren't the leaders that are going to lead us to the promised land here. Like your analogy of the coach is great. It's perfect, right? It's like these, like here in Arizona, we had Cliff Kingsbury as the coach of the Cardinals for a number of years. He had a losing record in college.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what made someone think that he will come to the pros and light it up?
You're
What
right.
what made people think that is, well, some other guy that's about his same age did.
Yeah.
So therefore,
Yeah.
right? And that's almost like party loyalty.
Yeah.
Well, I really liked Kennedy, therefore Kamala Harris is the best candidate.
Yeah.
Because she's got a D after her name, and so did Kennedy. And so somehow this connection is made, right? And so, like with coaches, well, they coached at Alabama, therefore, wherever they ever go, they must be a great coach.
Yeah.
And
That's,
it's proven time and time again, no, that's not how it works.
yeah. Yeah. I don't get it. I don't understand how, I think one thing that I've heard a few people mention is, this particular person I can't vote for because he's a narcissist, he's arrogant, he's basically a jerk. And when I hear that, I think, well, here's the deal. if we go back to World War II and we look at
Yeah.
General MacArthur, and
Patton.
we look at the generals that were icons that helped win the war. Those aren't guys that I would want to live with. When you
No,
yeah, pretty arrogant, egotistical, but they're the person to do the job, to
the
get the job
job.
done. And if our culture is starting to move towards, hey, I want people who are, warm and fuzzy and happy and people pleasers. I don't really care about what their policies entail. And I think, we're in for
You're in for trouble.
big, big trouble. Yeah.
It's like even more recently, like there was people, didn't like General Schwarzkopf in the Gulf War. He's so brash. He's, you know, too boisterous and too arrogant or whatever. Right. That's what a general does, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what you need to do. It's like I always remember Rush Limbaugh used to say, wars are for killing people and breaking things. So to say anything else about a war is stupid because that's the objective. Kill people and break things. So if you're not killing people and breaking things, then you're not doing it right. Right?
Yeah.
It's not some fancy police effort to make some other country better or whatever. Nope. The goal is to kill people and break things. So who do you put in charge of that if you decide to go to war? Is somebody who's good at killing people and breaking things,
Yeah.
right? That's the job. It's the
Yeah.
job. And sometimes it's the coach. It's just like Belichick, right? It's like the guy has the personality of a turtle and, is nothing but a grumpy grandpa kind of guy
Yeah.
who knows how to win football games.
Right.
Or at
Right.
least as long as Tom Brady's his quarterback, he
Yeah.
knows how to
Right.
win
That
football
helps.
games. If North
Yeah.
Carolina goes 3-10 this next year in college football, the
Yeah.
the legacy has been severely damaged,
Yeah.
right?
That's true. That is true.
Although he does have a 24-year-old girlfriend, so it's like as a
It
Gen
worked
Xer, like we're all secretly going, "Oh, nice work." It's
out.
like,
It also everybody landed on their feet in that.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I'm glad he's not hurting
Yeah.
after,
Right.
leaving New England. And it's funny because those guys always make a crap load of money doing the TV shows anyway.
Yeah.
It's like people saying, what was that former Bill Cowher? Like, oh, he'll come back.
Yeah.
He'll come back. Wait, he works one day a week and I'm sure makes millions of dollars
Right.
over working 365 days a year, getting criticized by every Tom, Dick, and Harry on
Yeah.
social media every single day, calling into question his manhood. Yeah, I think I'll do the once
Yeah.
a week gig,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
It's a no-brainer
uh,
for that
that's
one.
a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I think, path of least resistance
Yeah.
there. I always think that's funny. It's like, I can't imagine why you didn't come back to coaching. Really? You can't? Like, I sure can. It seems like a really crappy job, if you ask me. It seems like a job
Yeah.
that, like, you get, 99% of the time people are complaining about you.
Yeah, sports. And that was the other pet peeve thing that I wrote down to talk to you about is, these sideline interviews have to be about the most insulting thing.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, yesterday it was they're asking the coach, "Hey, if you win this game, you are in the playoffs. What do you need to do?" And the answer we get back is, "We need to play well and win, and it'll take care of itself." Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, coach. I'm thinking these guys are getting paid
To ask
millions
that
and millions
question.
of dollars. And then that's exponentially better than what the player's response is when they
Oh,
ask.
yeah.
You're getting sentence fragments and sputtering.
Yeah, it's like I heard, I don't know, I won't say who the sports figure was, but he was interviewed after a game recently and for like a minute. And I turned and looked at my son and I was like, I didn't understand a single word that he said. I literally could not pull out one word
No,
out
no.
of that.
If you say it with confidence, I've noticed these guys. you say it with all the confidence in the world, and it just makes everything fine. The one I heard yesterday was, and I won't say who it was, but they said, uh, so what you've been in the playoffs the last few years, and you have you've exited early,
Right.
hasn't gone anywhere. What needs to be different this year? And the player said, we need to play like Ravens and we'll be fine. And that was it. And he said it with confidence, and I'm thinking, we need to play like Ravens and we'll be fine. I'm thinking, well, so that
What does
what
that
does that
mean?
even mean? Like
I don't know what that means.
if you're a Viking or a Lion and you play like a Viking and a Lion, you're probably going to beat a Raven. So I assume he's not talking. So he's saying they need to play. It just these
Yeah,
things.
I don't know. It's something, it sounds like something a coach said and it's stuck in his head and he doesn't have a better answer. So he's just going to say that.
Yeah,
It's like coach platitudes bother me. Like it's why I like Kenny Dillingham at ASU because he's like so out there that it's refreshing,
yeah,
right? It's just refreshing because he's like a fan.
yeah.
And but that's kind of refreshing because it's what we said about why Joe Rogan is, I think, successful. I think it's why you and I find this conversation interesting is because it's not formulas and it's not written down answers. It's just people speaking off the cuff, and that's much
Right.
more interesting,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
why it's why Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld was a good show. It's because it was just him and another guy or another girl just talking
right.
about nothing. And
Yeah,
it's funny and interesting.
yeah. And just making you think about without trying to steer you in one
Yeah,
direction
there's
or
not a
the other.
political objective.
We're all, yeah,
We're just talking here.
yeah,
And like I think like the goal of a show like ours is to get people into that mindset more frequently.
right. Yeah,
Right? It's not like we're doing this and it's fine. You can listen to us jibber jabber back and forth all day long, right? Maybe you find it interesting. Maybe you don't. First of all, we don't care which way you lean. No, but it's it's more interesting, and we want people to have those type of conversations out in the real world,
right,
right? I'm tired of having conversations like you're talking to someone from HR, right?
right.
And I'm tired of listening to people
Yeah,
on TV, on the radio, whatever, talking. The other thing that I'm sick of is people yelling at me in these TV
yeah,
shows,
yeah,
right? And I just saw a poll the other day that said ESPN fans are pretty like fed up with ESPN in general because it's ridiculous. They're they were commenting in the Colorado game nonstop about Coach Prime and their Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter and Shadur Sand talking nonstop about them as the team was getting their teeth kicked in,
yeah,
right? They were behind 27 to nothing. And
yeah,
they were talking about, look at the effort from this Colorado team. And Coach Prime has the players, they don't quit. And, look at that fantastic running around, scrambling for a 14-yard loss. It was ridiculous.
yeah,
Right. And the BYU fans were absolutely like their heads were exploding on social media with like, could you mention one of our players just
yeah.
once since we're up
Please,
by 30?
yeah.
It's like
What else
this
do we
was
need to do?
ridiculous.
Yeah,
And I saw like I that is just something that I don't understand. And it's like coming up in these games tomorrow and on New Year's Day. ASU gets no respect. Boise State gets no respect. So I've never wanted them to win more,
yeah, right,
right? Just to
right.
stick it to ESPN and their SEC love affair and everything else. It's like I just want them to win all the more. I was really happy to see Iowa State beat Miami as pet players were punching each other on the Miami sidelines, and their quarterback quit at halftime because he had set the personal record that he wanted. I mean, come on.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah,
That's ridiculous. This is, I mean, like my frustration with college sports, which I didn't think that I would get frustrated with, is now like the NIL and the transfer portal. Um, I mean, entire teams going into the transfer portal when the coach leaves, practically,
yeah,
right? And you recruit this five-star guy, and then he sits for one quarter and he gets mad and now he's transferring.
yeah. That whole thing it's
It's
ruining.
gonna ruin the sport.
Yeah, yeah. Because now you'd have no loyalty to a school or anything. It's all about you. Once again, it's all about you.
Yep.
And that's what I wondered if we could you pay these NFL players like $30,000 a year? If there's a really good one, you could get them up to 40, 45,000. Lower the ticket prices down to like $3 a ticket and see just
Yeah.
going from that. Now we can go to games more often and it just seems like it's so over the top now with money and it's all becoming me individual that for me it kind of tarnishes the
It does. It does. And it was interesting listening to the teams and the coaches, some of these bowl games this week. And I'm obviously I'm partial to Iowa State because that's my alma mater, but Matt Campbell said after the game, it's hard in college football these days to find a team with heart,
right.
but that's what we are. And
Yeah,
he said, Ames isn't for everyone. And that's directed specifically at certain players, right? Who
yeah,
want, if I'm not playing at Ohio State or Alabama, it's not good enough, right? Or whatever.
yeah.
And he's saying like that, losing that team mentality. And here I read it. This was a great article. Maybe it was on X, I think. Somebody said, here's the problem with all of that in college football. You are now competing with the NFL
Hmm.
because now players are getting paid. So now you have individual achievements being rewarded,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you want to have a super league, right? You want to, it's SEC and Big Ten, and they should just have their own tournaments. And here's the problem. Now that is competing with the NFL, where players are played and it's about the money.
yeah,
And you're not as good as the NFL. Your players aren't as good as the NFL. And now I'm not cheering for a team, I'm cheering for players. So now it's just like the NFL in that. And the differentiator had always been the college loyalty, the loyalty of the student fans, the
right,
excitement of the student fans. That was the differentiator. That's what makes NCAA basketball a billion times more entertaining than
right,
the NBA, which is unwatchable at this point.
right. That's true.
And the college basketball tournament is one of the most exciting things that there is. It's because of the kids
Right.
and the
Apt.
schools and the underdogs
Right.
and guys who aren't going to be professionals,
Yeah.
shooting lights out in a game or
Yeah.
something, playing for Butler, playing for Davidson, playing for Austin P, whatever it is, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
watchable. That's entertaining.
Yeah. It is.
But the manufactured crap, it's like I'd always say, I'd rather watch a junior high boys basketball game than a professional game
Right.
for that very reason, because there's people who actually want to play. They're doing so for no other reason than the joy of playing and school
Right.
spirit and everything else. It's
They're
much more entertaining.
loyal to their school or loyal to their team. And yeah.
And I mean, junior high boys are better than WNBA players anyway. So I'll take some heat from that. But
Yeah. And with that, can we take a bathroom break?
yeah, yeah, it's like,
Can we do
should
that
I
real quick?
pause?
Can we pause that? Yeah. I think my dad's coming at 2:30.
All
Just
right.
I'm going to
All
take a
right.
quick.
We'll yeah, we'll move on here.
Yeah, let me take a quick bathroom break.
So now you guys know that it's a live show. Like you're not watching it live, but it's recorded live, which is the beauty of it, right? And uh, that's what I think that's what makes it interesting and fun is like just hearing the conversation about those things. And I like to make jokes about everything and everybody. My son, speaking of the WNBA, which no one ever does, but I will. Um, the two funny things this last week I saw. One was apparently Reese, I forget her first name. She's one of the WNBA stars, and they made a Reese's Pieces cereal with her picture on the front. And so I saw a guy, he it's a, he made his own video. He bought the box, brings it home, he sets out the bowl, and then he pours the cereal all around the bowl. Like none of it went into the bowl. He's like, wow, it's just like the real thing. Angel Reese, that's the first Angel Reese, It's like none of it actually goes into the hoop,
Oh,
right? It's like that was a funny one. And then the Family Guy has the ultimate, if you want to laugh, you have to Google it, Family Guy WNBA joke. But essentially, they do one of these little cutaway things, and they cut to a WNBA game, and there's announcers talking, and he's like, wow, that's exciting play there by number three or whatever. And he's like, yes, that's why they can command $7,000 a year. And the other guy says, but is all that money really worth being ugly? And the other guy says, well, that's for the fan to decide. And there's one guy in the stands goes, yay. This, and I just like that nails it, right? Like that's the perfect joke for the whole thing.
yeah,
Uh, I love little cameos or whatever that they do on shows like Family Guy and Simpsons too, where it's just like a random joke,
yeah,
right? And like you and I have been to some comedy live performances, right? We love Brian Regan, who's incredibly funny.
yeah,
And at one of the ones that we went to, he said uh, he had a joke, but he had no setup for it. So he's like, I have no setup for this joke, so I'm just gonna say the joke, which is, what do you do when you want to book a table at a casino, uh, uh, but you're having second thoughts about it? It's like that's a reservation, reservation, reservation. And so
yeah.
he's like, I defy anybody to come up with a setup to get into that joke. There's no
You're right.
way into it. You just gotta smash through the wall.
Yeah, that was definitely talent there.
So this is not a promo for Brian Regan, but I think both of us would say if you get a chance to see him live in a concert, that is money well spent.
Yeah, yeah,
You
he's
will
great.
laugh for over an hour straight, and it's really great, right?
Yeah, he's
There's only a few things in my life where I have spent a decent amount of money and said, wow, that was worth that and more. And Brian Regan concert was one of those things. The other was the helicopter flight around Kauai,
yeah,
which was they're not cheap, but holy crap, that's amazing.
yeah.
So two things on your bucket list or on your New Year's resolution, Brady. And that's going to be my final question is New Year's resolutions.
New Year's resolution. Wow. It's definitely going to be tightening up the diet and exercise more, like the rest of the population, I'm sure.
Going
Uh,
to the gym for 2 weeks.
right. I'm not sure if I set the individual goal of most Christmas cookies consumed this
Yeah,
year.
right. But I did pass that goal.
It could be a personal record, if nothing else.
That's right.
Let's see. No, that's pretty much it. I'm at an age now where I've crossed the line. I've got to schedule a colonoscopy. So yeah, that's definitely
I'd like to say I'm right there with you, but I don't think I'm going to do that.
You're gonna roll the dice, huh?
I think I'll roll the dice on that one. I don't know. I don't know. Life's too short for, I don't know
Yeah.
if I want that, but
We here do
uh,
not
I'm,
have, we're not in agreement of anything that may or may not come out of this show, blah, 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 blah.
that's right. That we are not doctors. Well,
Yes.
one of us isn't, but
So,
I'm not giving out legal or medical advice or gambling advice for that
right.
matter as well. But put
Based
your
on,
money on ASU against Texas. I'm telling
right.
you, that will pay off like crazy.
Oh,
So I don't know. The odds are they're like a 10-point dog, which is crazy to me. They
yeah.
got to buy. How can
Yeah.
the buy team be the 10-point dog?
I know. I know. It's gonna be, there's gonna be fireworks.
We'll
That's
be talking about it in the next podcast, right?
yeah.
So we'll see how that shakes out. But
Yeah.
um, I'm excited for it, and I wanna. I think Oregon's going to win it all, and it's unfortunate that they have to play Ohio State in a quarterfinal. That's not right, and that's what Saban said. He's like they messed up. You can't have a team that was number two all year until the last week of the season have to play the number one team in a quarterfinal round. Like that
Yeah.
just doesn't make
That's
sense.
strange. That is strange.
That shouldn't have happened. I don't know
Yeah.
what they should have done about that, but they got to factor in that Ohio State was like the second ranked team literally the entire season, except for the last week.
Yeah.
They lost to Michigan, right? It's like,
Yeah. Well, and
and
the
then
other
you,
thing that's big is, if Detroit takes care of business against the 49ers, which they should, then you've got a true winner take all scenario where Minnesota and the Lions, if you win, you get a bye in the number one seed. If you lose, you're a wild card, number five seed
yeah,
on the road. It's like, oh my
that's
goodness.
not right. I don't know how
That's,
to fix that, but they said in the game last night that there will be a 14 win wild card team, and that's never happened.
yeah, that's,
So it's either Minnesota or Detroit, and one of them is going to have 14 wins, likely,
yeah,
and be a wild card. That's
yeah,
ridiculous, right?
yeah,
Like
on the
when
road.
a 9-8 Tampa Bay is probably going to win their division
Yeah,
and have a home game in the playoffs,
yeah,
right? But
yeah. I
yeah,
wouldn't want to be the,
it's all on the line next week, Brady. You versus me, Vikings versus the Lions. It's like,
yeah,
wow,
yeah. I know. I
this is
just
something
wish
else. We never saw this coming. And
it,
it was, of course, it was a great joy of mine to see Minnesota beat Green Bay for the second time this
yeah,
year, by the way, swept
that,
them.
that's a nice sweep. I think the Lions are kind of like a battleship that's kind of half underwater right now. There's
With
smoke
all the
coming out of the
injuries.
engine room. It's just I wish they were a lot healthier, but I mean they got to beat the 49ers. That's
Yeah, I think they will. But like you said, it's like, I think throughout the season, Detroit has been the better team.
yeah,
Uh, I think Minnesota is almost completely healthy.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that could tip the scales,
Well,
right?
and they're hitting
Detroit's,
stride going into the playoffs.
yeah,
That's usually pretty huge when you're
they're
going
on
to
a
make a long run.
9-win streak
Yeah,
right now. They're a great first half team. They seem to let things get a little bit twisty in the fourth quarter
yeah,
of games, which scares me, especially against a good team like Detroit. But it's like it's exciting one way or the other, and they might meet again.
yeah,
So that could be a preview of the NFC Championship game as well.
yeah. That'd be
So it'll
kind of
be
fun.
interesting.
Well, and I was going to ask you, what's the best? What would you say your best gift was if you had a good
Ah,
gift
yes.
here?
Best Christmas gift. Well, actually, my son, for the first year, bought presents for myself and my wife with his own money. Well, his own money.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hey,
money
did
we
you take
gave
that
to
money out
him.
of my wallet?
Yeah.
I'm
It's like,
missing.
hey, this feels a little, I'm 20 short. He
Yeah.
gave me well, he gave us essentially a thing of hot sauces from around the world.
Oh, cool.
And we had tacos the other night and used about 10 of them, trying
Oh,
them different. Like, I really like that because it's
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it's different.
And then I got this is funny. I'm going to be using it. I might use it in this podcast. I'll use it in my other podcast, but it's a teleprompter. And you're
Huh.
like, wait, what? It's like literally. So your camera goes behind the glass, and then there's a sloped piece of glass, and then you lay like an iPad or another device on it, and then there's a little app that does the reverse to see it on the
Oh,
screen, just like a teleprompter. And then
neat.
you control it with a little remote control, the text scrolling up and down. So you
Okay.
can look right into the camera as you're reading something,
Wow.
right? Just like they do on TV.
If only
So for
Mama would
things,
have had that during the
yeah,
debate.
that didn't pan out. And then, when it stops, you just keep repeating the last line,
Yeah.
or another politician who said, end quote, right?
Yeah.
Like, John F. Kennedy, ask not what you can do for
Um,
your country, but well, you know the thing, end
no,
quote, right? It's like, wait a
nightmare.
second, that's pretty sure that part you weren't supposed to read, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that was my best. What was yours?
Yeah. Well, same thing. My daughters, it was the first year. They have a job, so they have a little income. So they got us each something. And I actually got a bracelet that it has a little small um, oh, what do you call it? Like a little medallion type
Trinket.
thing, a little trinket. Yeah. Yeah. But you look into it, and it's a picture of me and my mom, which
Oh,
my
that's sweet.
way. So it was kind of a nice sentimental gift. And the other was I got about 30 Humphrey Bogart movies.
Oh, awesome.
I got the whole signature collection that has all it doesn't have African Queen and it doesn't have Casablanca, so I'm definitely going to need to pick those
Get
up.
those.
But I've got so many of them that I'm dying to watch. So yeah,
I,
those
I,
are
I, yeah, and that's a great one because those are forever, right?
yeah,
Like those are great gifts you can enjoy over and over again. Love
yeah,
Bogart, love Bogart movies, the style. We talked about that before, just the style, way people talk to each other.
right.
Bogart would, tell the shut up, broad, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's like you couldn't
yeah,
get away with that. But then the lady would talk back to him,
yeah,
right? Which was awesome. That's,
yeah,
who
yeah,
are you to talk to me that way? Eh. It's that pacing that they had in those movies. I have like four sets of Alfred Hitchcock movies
oh
in
yeah,
4K,
yeah,
and I've been watching those, and I've watched them many, many times, and they're just so good.
oh
And
yeah, yeah,
they're good on multiple levels. They're just
yeah,
interesting. They're a snapshot in time. They were
yeah,
cultural icons in the
right,
day. And it harkens back to a different time period and sensibilities.
yeah,
And, they're just interesting. I like older movies of all decades,
right,
right? I watched, you mentioned The Christmas Story,
yeah,
and which I watched, of course, on Christmas Day, and I've seen many times. It's just so entertaining. I don't know
yeah,
how else to explain it, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Having a kid get his mouth washed out with soap. That's a
yeah,
beautiful thing.
yeah,
And I just don't know
yeah.
why we stopped doing that because it seemed like a really good, poignant, well constructed penalty for swearing.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Like, and did anybody ever die or get seriously hurt from soap? I don't think so. I think it's like a urban legend, that like Pop Rocks and Diet Coke or something. Like it never really happened, but people believe that it does.
Wasn't it blindness from soap poisoning? Wasn't that
I see.
the
I don't buy that. I don't believe any of that. Right?
was
I
it, well,
just
that
that
was
was
just
the joke in
nature?
the movie, right?
Yeah,
Like that
yeah.
you're gonna go blind.
It,
And it's like, I'm pretty
yeah,
sure nobody did and nobody swallowed it, right? Like it's just, I think
yeah,
it was actually a pretty decent punishment, and it's funny. And
yeah,
I love that the kid gets over on the mom. And I think that's a part that I picked up of even more this time. He tells the whole sob story about how an icicle hit him, and that was the
yeah,
thing. It wasn't the BB gun. And then she's, taking care of him, and he's just sitting there like this, and then when she buys it and stuff, he looks into the camera and he goes like that. It's like he
Yeah.
breaks the fourth wall and like I'm getting over on my mom. Like I just totally
Yeah.
scammed her and
She
I'm like a
bought it.
second grader, right? I think
Yeah.
those are the kind of things that your kids do when they watch movies. They love that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my son's favorite thing in a movie is kids getting over on parents. He thinks that's funny and just his eyes light up when a kid gets over on his parents.
It's a
So,
class.
hey man, this was a good conversation, and I'll be wishing you a happy new year in person
But yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
We should do a little fireside chat. We should set up a
Right.
camera and do a little fireside chat or whatever.
Yeah.
But happy New Year to you guys, and
Likewise.
hope you did have an excellent Christmas. I hope our viewers did.
Yeah.
Remind them to watch us on YouTube, which is a good platform to watch on. I like Spotify. I think I actually like Spotify better, but whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have to subscribe necessarily, but we want you to follow us and comment, interact with us on any of our platforms. Amazon Music, you can go to X, you can comment on us. We sometimes make references on X to things that we've talked about on a recent show. You can interact with us there. We'd love to talk to you, but we appreciate it. And we really want everybody in our audience to have a happy new year. And if you're a
Yes.
Gen X person, screw the New Year's resolutions. It doesn't work, right? Like, just no, just stop. It's not going to do you any good.
Have another
And then
cookie.
You'll feel bad about yourself a couple weeks from now when you don't do them. So
That's
just nah,
right.
leave
Yeah.
it off. But have fun on New Year's Eve, but be home before the street lights come on and then celebrate until the wee hours of 7 p.m.
There
as
you go.
Seinfeld. All right. All right.
Perfect.
We will talk to you guys later and we'll see you.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye bye.